If you are a frequent listener to the podcast, you know that we have been sponsored by Fuji Sports for quite some time now. Whether you're looking for apparel, equipment, bags, or accessories, Fuji Sports has got it covered. Go to Fujisports.com to see the latest selection of everything you need for your Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, or MMA journey. That's Fujisports.com. Let me take a minute to tell you about RŌL TV. If you're looking to take your Jiu-Jitsu to the next level and supplement your BJJ education, then RŌL TV has you covered. RŌLAcademy.tv has over 1,500 videos covering individual techniques, positions, and concepts, including seminars and workshops with top-level competitors and instructors like Chris Wojcik, Robert Drysdale, Aaron Hurley, Emily Kwok, and more. Whether you are a beginner or more advanced student, RŌL TV is the online platform that can take your jiu-jitsu to the next level. What's up, everyone, and welcome back. If you haven't already, please hit the like, share, subscribe, download, listen, and whatever other button there is, and leave us a review wherever you listen. This helps us bring you the great guests and amazing content that you've come to expect. In this conversation, Thomas and his guests explore the rich history and evolution of Jiu-Jitsu, discussing its growth, challenges, and the importance of community and trust within the practice. They delve into teaching methodologies, the significance of documenting the art's legacy, and the stories of its pioneers, emphasizing the need to preserve the truth of Jiu-Jitsu for future generations. Here's the RŌL Radio with a 4th degree BJJ black belt who has affiliates across the globe, an author and one of the creators of the new book, Groundswell, The Rise of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in America, Roy Dean.
Welcome to RŌL Radio.
And we are live. Professor Roy Dean in the house. Welcome to the show. That's number one. Again, returning. Would you believe that it's been 5 years since the last time we had a conversation?
No. It's amazing how these years are speeding by. But I'm happy to be back. I appreciate the opportunity, Thomas.
Yeah, no, I looked it up because I was curious. September of 2020. Yeah.
Okay,
It's been a
yeah.
minute, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's definitely been, it was a very interesting time. 2020 was such a pivotal year. And there's been so many adventures and stories since then. And I'm glad to see you're still at it and documenting the voices of this incredible art.
Yeah, no, and as we were talking right before we started recording, similar to you, I love having these conversations, even from documentation perspective. I feel like older I get, I acknowledge the fact that we all have limited amount of time. Like at some point, some of these stories will disappear, whether mine or others. And having some kind of form of putting this all together in a sense, creating a historical patterns and historical documentation, I think is important, isn't it? Even for a young sport like Jiu-Jitsu, because Jiu-Jitsu is fairly young, isn't it?
Well, the art is not that young. I would say, a couple of hundred years. But in its sport form, I think the sport form really took shape, starting with judo in kind of the 1964 Olympics, and the birth of judo once a sport hits the Olympics, it goes, fully international. So, and then with the introduction of the UFC in 1993, we're at just a little over 30 years since Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has really hit the public consciousness. And in that time, there's been tremendous development. Good Jiu-Jitsu from then still holds up as good Jiu-Jitsu today. But there's been evolutions in the art, in the approach. And I think as people get into the new media landscape, they get caught up in the current stories of today and they forget about some of the pioneers that may have paved the road for the current situation that we're in, where there's, an amazing assortment of high-level practitioners. There's instant access to some of the brightest minds in the sport and art. And, we're kind of spoiled for choice in the modern era, but it wasn't always like that.
Well, let me ask you this on that front. Do you feel like this is a consequence of the rapid growth? Because even though, I mean, you're right, Jiu-Jitsu has existed for about 200 or some years. But if we look at the big picture, compared to perhaps wrestling or other, activities, sports, or even arts,
hmm
it's fairly young from a broad perspective. And then even if we take this a little bit deeper, like existence in the US, that's even
hmm
younger, correct?
Well, I mean, jujitsu. I remember we had somebody when I was doing Aikido. I was 19, so that was, over 30 years ago. We had a guy who was doing kind of a Japanese style of jujitsu at my Aikido uh, club academy, and people couldn't even say jujitsu, and it was kind of looked down on, and people didn't really trust it. It was not very well known compared to like karate or taekwondo or even aikido. Those were far more prevalent, much more popular as far as martial arts goes. But modern day Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practice as a sport and the awareness of it, um, I actually never thought it would get to the level of popularity that it enjoys today. The fact that it is starting to rival, you know, I always thought, man, if it could just rival baseball or soccer as a legitimate activity for children to participate in, as a viable option for them to participate in physical education, that would be incredible. Uh, and it's happening. People are not only are their kids enrolled in jujitsu, but they're encouraging them to compete. You look at the success of the Rutola brothers. I mean, they dropped out of school and went full time, and they had full parental support. And that just would have been unheard of. Like, no one would have done something like that back when, I was 20 years old. So in the last 30 years, there's been a huge explosion. In the last 15 to 20 years, there's just been this acceleration in its popularity. And, I was recently in Australia, and it's everywhere.
Is that
Tons
a
of
good thing?
people.
Is that a good thing in your mind? Like looking objectively? I mean, we all want jiu-jitsu to be big and strong. We all want everybody to practice. I don't know about you, but all my students talk to their friends and come on by, come on try. Like everybody wants that, but is that a good thing?
I think it is a good thing, but there are some downsides. Um, and it's difficult to name all the downsides. For example, um, PED use with young men. If you're 25, you don't need PEDs, do you? Or maybe you should be refining your technique.
Even if you're
I,
40, do you really need, like, I mean,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's a deeper conversation, but
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Or and even I mean, there are rumors of a well-known kids team where they're on, on PEDs, and it's like, well, that's too young. It's like, is winning worth it at that level? And when you push kids that intensely, it's easy to create an aversion to the art. They were pushed into it, and then later in life, they don't want to do it anymore. Um, that's common with a lot of sports, whether it's downhill skiing or soccer or whatever. So I do think overall the awareness and the opportunity for people to be well armed, even without firearms, a well armed society without arms. Well armed society is a polite society. So for people to have the ability to, be able to take care of themselves, to protect their loved ones, um, with this superpower that we call jujitsu, I mean, I think objectively that's a good thing. You discover a lot about yourself. It encourages humility. It encourages physical fitness. It encourages cross training in other physical domains. The rise of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has brought more awareness to judo in America, where judo is really a very, very small martial art and unpopular. So, I mean, there's kind of a return of the favor. Just like Aikido brought awareness to Daito-ryu Aikido Jiu-Jitsu, its predecessor, which was dying out. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brought more awareness to judo, which is really popular internationally, but in the U.S., it's nowhere near the popularity of BJJ. So I think overall it's good. There are a few drawbacks, but I would say I'm grateful for the expansion.
As Jiu-Jitsu continues growing, I feel like because of its very fluid approach to its existence. And what I mean by that, everything is, let's go surf and have some acai and just chill back and relax and let's roll around. I feel like the historical part of it disappears, especially as if we compare this to a little bit more structured arts like judo or karate. The history of it is a fundamental part of these arts, and I feel like in jiu-jitsu that's not as much. And I also do feel that some organizations try to preserve their own history and they really thrive on that factor. But overall, would you agree that that is more of a secondary part to what we do?
Yeah, secondary or third or fourth.
Yeah.
It's pretty low on the list, and the educational systems in place with jiu-jitsu are a lot. It is far less structured, than many other
And this is
arts.
why I was asking if it's a good thing that jiu-jitsu continues growing. Because if we compare this to judo, particularly, but any other more traditional martial art, there is not only a system of education. These are the milestones. These are the expectations, and the way how it's being taught is slightly different than what we are experiencing in jiu-jitsu.
Yes. And although different organizations, like USA Judo has different promotional requirements than maybe like judo in France or, judo, or the Kodokan or something like that. But there is I wouldn't say loosey-goosey approach, but it is very relaxed in the way that people approach the art. It is extremely unstandardized. Both, and now people are trying to bring in other methodologies into teaching, like whatever ecological method or, it's so in a way people are experimenting with, kind of the educational structure of it, but there are just some obvious things that people are missing. And probably the easiest thing I could point to is the lack of standard training when it comes to ukemi or falling skills. In judo, that is fundamental. Learn to protect yourself. Learn to master your body. As you're being thrown, learn how to do a forward roll properly, a backward roll properly. Learn to change the shape of your bones so you can go from being, a straight line upright into a ball or a circle. Learn how to, diffuse the energy. Learn how to take a high fall or a break fall where you can diffuse the energy that's going through you, through a greater surface area to protect yourself. Stop the fall, stop the roll, instead of taking it in a singular point. Like, that is undoubtedly the most practical aspect of martial arts, at least the grappling arts. And it's really underemphasized in modern BJJ schools.
Do you think that flexible, let's just call it flexible growth, contributed to the rapid growth of jiu-jitsu? I mean, if we look at other arts, karate or taekwondo or even judo, that growth has been pretty steady. Actually, I don't even know if there is a growth per se. They have very big presence. But if we look at percentage of growth, jiu-jitsu suppresses all of them.
It does, and that's largely through media exposure. How did Kung Fu get so popular? Bruce Lee. How did karate, taekwondo? How did those become popular? Best of the best, Karate Kid. How did Aikido become as popular? Steven Seagal. And Hoist Gracie introduced it through, via the UFC to kind of a worldwide audience. And then the UFC has done so much. I would not be able to, become a jiu-jitsu professional without the UFC and that media exposure, where it's a fundamental skill that is required in mixed martial arts competition. People love fighting. People, and it offered something. I always say it's high intensity, low impact.
Mm-hmm.
It offers an ability to fight. It's not a full no rules or no holds barred or vale tudo mixed martial arts thing. I mean, that's a fuller expression of martial arts. But you can, in a very gentlemanly way, learn how to fight effectively without striking and be able to dominate your opponent and even dispatch your opponent through a graduated means, which a lot of other martial arts, they don't have that. They don't have the ability to scale quite as seamlessly up the ladder of escalation. So it's really intoxicating to watch, where you say, oh, I want to learn how to do that. Whatever that guy is doing. When I saw Hoist, I was like, I kind of have a similar body type to him. I want to do that. And, people have the opportunity to do it. And along the way, in learning self-defense or the fighting aspect, they get hooked into the community. They get hooked into the fitness element of it. It brings awareness to where they're lacking. Man, I'm really inflexible. Maybe I should do some yoga. I'm really weak. Maybe I should lift some weights or kettlebells or learn a mobility regimen so that I can be a little bit more mobile. I mean, there's so many different ways that you can improve yourself, and jiu-jitsu holds a mirror up to you and says, here you are. No getting around it. That's who you are. That's your level. That's where you're at. Which is a good thing, but often uncomfortable.
Eye-opening, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, really? I suck this bad? But I was trying my best, and it's incredibly humbling. I mean, a lot of people that like difficult things love jiu-jitsu because it's, even if you're normally a quick study and good at other things, traditionally, hey, I'm a high-powered lawyer and I'm really good. Or I was, a really good athlete in high school. Or I'm a chess champion. I should be able to understand these moves and be able to, like, those help, but you still have to do the work. And part of the doing the work is getting worked. You have to be able to be humbled and go through the same stages of grief that everybody goes through on the mat. Because, I mean, hey, it's not an easy journey, but that's what makes it worth it, because we like challenging things.
Well, that's one of the most fascinating things for me personally about jiu-jitsu. For me, as I experienced it over the last 20 plus years, but also watching other people do it, is you could have a CEO, police officer, carpenter, and who knows who else in the engagement, and everything equalizes. It really doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what past experiences you have. You really have to submerge yourself into this moment. You got to let go of everything else, and you got to figure out this puzzle. And as you mentioned, all the weaknesses do get exposed.
Yeah, they do. They do. And, the only currency is your skill on the mat.
Mm-hmm.
You can be rich. That's why a lot of very, very wealthy people like BJJ, because you can't fake the skill. You can't buy the skill. It's something you have to earn. And you get respect because of your skill level. And the respect that you get and receive is real. It's not, people aren't kowtowing because they think you're going to give them a tip. Or, oh, you did a really incredible business merger. Wow. no one cares.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody cares. I mean, you can be a carpet layer, you could be a CEO. Nobody cares on the mat. They worry if you're a good training partner, if you have good hygiene, and if you're trustworthy.
Mm-hmm. Because it is all about trust, isn't it?
There's a tremendous amount of trust that's required, and you build that trust over time. And some people are
Yeah.
not trustworthy, and you recognize that, and you can sniff that out. And the thing is, you're not afraid to call out people that aren't trustworthy, that aren't good with their body. You avoid them, and you learn how to avoid them in real life. You're like, oh no, I don't get a good hit off that guy.
That's a message too, isn't it? Like if somebody gets avoidable multiple times and they receive that message, not necessarily direct or blunt, but it might be very, very vague in a sense of nobody wants to train with me. Like, what is happening here? Like, perhaps we are not the best training partners.
Yeah, I mean, you're socially ostracized. Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
You need to take a look at yourself. I mean, you can
Yeah.
blame the other people, but you gotta, every time you point one finger, there's three pointed back at you, right? So
Exactly.
you need to look, and there are there are people that I have not wanted to train with, and there are even people I've recommended, like back when I was training with Mr. Harris. I told him, you got to kick this guy out. This guy's bad news. He is bad news. And he ended up not allowing him to go to group classes, and then he eventually left. But yeah, there are those people, and you learn to sniff them out, and then you make a stand. No, this person's not good for the tribe. He needs to be out.
Why do you think individuals like this engage into group activities like jiu-jitsu? Why do you think? Why do we think, like, deep inside we want to be a bad training partner? Do you think that's a choice, or is more embedded into us?
I don't think it's a choice to be a bad training partner. I think they can't help it because they're so caught up in themselves that they can't see outside of it.
Sometimes I struggle with that. Like I think to myself, if somebody has a conversation with, like, Roy, like, look, here's a thing. Let's work on this together, and let me help you. Let's figure this out, how to improve this area. This happens once, twice, 3, 4, 5 times maybe, and no change is made. Like, are they not hearing that?
They're not ready for. No. I mean, they may hear it, but it's easy to hear something, but it's difficult to put things into action. It's not about ideas; it's about execution, right? So you get feedback. Do you execute on that feedback? Most people don't. Some people do, but and that's the thing. You allow people into your academy, and there are people that I've kicked out of my academy, and there are people that you allow in. You work with them. It's more about giving people the opportunity to come in.
Yeah, I agree.
You give them the chance. I was always more lenient on, come on out. Let's see how you do. I remember one of he was a great student, Joe. He was just such a cool guy. He was reticent. He didn't think that I would want someone like him in the academy. What was like him? He was really heavily tattooed. He loved tattoos. He had tattoos all over his body. It's a little more acceptable now to be heavily tattooed, but back then I was like, dude, what are you talking about? Of course, you're just a person. He was a great individual. But see, that was in his own head. And there are people where it's important to give people a chance. And the dojo, whether you're accepted or not, most people are accepted and you work with them. But then sometimes people aren't a good fit and they have to go, and they either need to be with other people that, for example, I remember a guy, he was an old timer, but he was really kind of crazy. He was better for an MMA gym. He wouldn't have been happy with just jiu-jitsu. He wanted to grind it out. He wanted, He wanted something different. And so I recommended to him an MMA gym, that boom, boom, boom. Those are your people, and other people don't want the intensity of jiu-jitsu. Oh, maybe you should go do Aikido. Same techniques, but, less resistance, or maybe it's Japanese jiu-jitsu or whatever. I mean, there's a place for everyone, but what's more important is giving people the opportunity to come out and participate in the group and see if you fit there. I just had a possible affiliate come out not too long ago, and he wasn't the right fit. He flew out to California. I worked with him and wasn't the right fit. I let him know, and then he went back. And some people, aren't the right fit, and it's okay. It's okay. He'll find the right tribe, but it wasn't with me.
I mean, that speaks volumes about the leadership that you project out, and the fact of it's okay to be who you are. It's just perhaps this is not the circle. And I think that's important to communicate, especially as this continues growing, right? Because the consequence of this growth that we are experiencing in jiu-jitsu is the fact that there is a large diversity of what is being offered between different academies, right?
Oh my God, yeah. And it's only increasing.
Yes.
Do I want a no-gi academy?
Right.
Do I want a gi academy? Do I want one that does both? Do I want one that's connected with an MMA team? Do I want one that's more quote unquote traditional values and more akin to Gracie Jiu-Jitsu? Do I want that kind of highly structured introductory curriculum? Do I, what do you want? I mean, there's something for everyone. And the places that maybe have like a slightly easier on-ramp, those are really, really valuable, because the dojo that I came up in, when I started training at Claudio France's in, he was probably 97. It was rough, man. These guys were animals.
I mean, that's a few decades ago too. So just the jiu-jitsu itself is different, right?
Definitely. And people were the people that would go straight to MMA now were doing jiu-jitsu because they were like, well, this is what's winning in MMA. So that's what I want to do. I want to learn real fighting. And, I had a training partner. I was like, just let me do the technique. He's like, no, you got to feel what's real. And I'm just trying to do the technique, dude. We're in the technical portion. Let me get it. Let me get it a couple of times. And people really have no idea about graduating. I'm so blessed to have been under Mr. Harris, where it was, everything is a progression. Yeah, right. So you start out with no resistance, and then, specific resistance, and then specific resistance within confines, which is basically ecological method. And then you go to actual resistance. And in Japan, they have the no resistance cooperative training, and then they have the form, and then you have the formless, the randori, the full resistance sparring. But it's much easier, and you can bridge that gap, but it is much easier if you have some intermediate steps in between. And people just want to jump to like the intermediate step with kind of this ecological approach. And it seems like they lack perspective. Many people lack perspective in that sense.
But that's easy for some of the newer students, especially, to do that, or wanting to do that, right? Like, I feel like that's not only limited to jiu-jitsu per se. Is anybody who's learning to swim, would they want to swim across the pool immediately day one? Same thing with jiu-jitsu. This is our first week, and we want to be going, pound somebody's head into the floor or choke them out. Like, are these unrealistic expectations that we set ourselves, or are these insecurities, and we're really trying to fight for life?
It's the ego. It's the ego, and at least in my case, I wanted to be really good. I wanted to show people I was really good. And
were you that guy?
I mean, I wasn't that guy. I understood what training was, but I had expectations of myself like I had a black belt in judo. I did all this Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. I understood. I read all the books. I was in pretty good shape. I was kind of like, I had some athletic talent, and I was getting worked. And I'm like, what is the matter here? What do I need to do? And, over time you develop the wisdom of like, okay, a lot of times it's not really what technique do I need? It's training method. How do I train? That's the other unspoken
Yeah.
part of the art. Figuring out how to train, not what to train. What to train is relatively easy. How to train, how to select the right environment, how to select the right training partners, the intensity with which you do it, how to develop the sensitivity through one opponent or one training partner that then can apply to all opponents. People
Why
go
why
ahead.
is that so underestimated or not even talked about? I feel like when we look at other sports or other activities or other arts, that's way more thought through. Like, not only this is what you will be teaching, but this is how you will be teaching. If we look at the education system, it's a similar. It's like some of these things are designed for the student to succeed versus I feel like in jiu-jitsu, it's really much a shoot off the hip. I mean, there are some academies that don't even have a curriculum.
Oh my God, that's so true. That's so true. Well, I think people see the end result. They're like, oh, they're really sparring. They're sparring hard. They watch competition and they see the end result and they're like, how can I do that without doing basically mini competition in class? They feel like that kind of training is exactly what you need to do to get the end result. But in fact, that's wrong. There was just a clip of an old podcast I did with Jeff Glover. And I'm not sure if I'm going to get this exactly right, but he was saying, look at boxing. You have to master, shadow boxing, footwork, bag work, mitt work. Then sparring. You have to master these other aspects and get them totally honed in. And it's not sparring. Mitt work is not sparring. Bag work is not sparring. Footwork is not sparring. Shadow boxing is not sparring.
So let me ask you flat out: why are we so naive in jiu-jitsu? I mean, why one? Why is this being offered? But two, why is the expectation?
I don't think people are naive. They're just ignorant.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. Yeah.
And really good instructors create environments where it's not sparring all the time. The other problem is a lot of guys go into instruction and there's a lot of ego, like, oh, my guys are going to be the best. My guys are going to be the toughest. We're going to be breaking arms at the tournament. I have to show everyone how good I am and my technique and my lineage and blah, 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 blah. So when you do that, you kind of attract a certain personality, and those guys are relatively impatient. They don't want to do, and honestly, like when I started teaching, I mean, I started teaching professionally like 2007 and 2006, 2007. And some of my ideas people were not into it. Like a technical demonstration of skill, like people were like, that is ridiculous. That's McDojo. That's kata. What is that? The idea of, of just very disciplined repetitions, a drill to win. It wasn't, that didn't really catch on until Andre Galvao came out with Drill to Win. Even very similar to shadow boxing or shadow wrestling, doing kind of just basic intuitive movements, like free flow movements on the ground where you're, kind of tabletopping, like walking on all fours. You do a sit out, you do a shot, you do a sprawl, you sit back, you do an arm drag, you roll over, just kind of intuitive, natural movements on the ground by yourself. No one was doing that. And it seemed weird to recommend it, but honestly, that's what you do. You have these movements in your body. It's about chaining the movements together seamlessly. And now all those things are like really coming around because there's been a maturity where it's like, oh, we can get a little benefit here, we can get a little benefit there. And also, being exposure to other sports methodologies. One thing I do like about kind of Greg Souders is that he is going into academic literature for, that is a great resource for learning how to improve sports performance, because there's a tremendous amount of research that's been done over many years, over many countries. They were doing studies. The Russians were doing studies on weightlifting. Way back when, and periodization and all of that. There's a tremendous. Now, whether those studies are being interpreted properly, that's a totally different question. But the fact that you're going into some of that research. When I started doing BJJ and they had like this incredibly hard warm up. All right, we're doing 200 sit-ups, we're doing 100 push-ups, we're doing 100 jumping jacks, we're doing all this stuff to exhaust you. I thought, this is kind of not great. This is not ideal. This is not building sports-specific movements. Whereas you go to gymnastics, I just thought it could be so much better. You go to gymnastics, they do conditioning at the end. They do fine-tune motor skills in the beginning when you're fresh and your nervous system has not been fried yet.
Do you think there's a consequence of jiu-jitsu being relatively young in comparison to the other sports?
See, I don't think it's young.
So I'll play devil's advocate. If it's not young, how come we are so far behind?
I think they just had. I think it's a little bit too much adherence to tradition. My instructor showed me this way. You can see it in the most elemental, like single technique.
Oh, absolutely.
Like that's not an arm lock. Like say you have your legs in a different position, to finish the arm lock. Mm-hmm. You have your ankles crossed or something. That's not how you do an arm lock. I saw Hickson do an arm lock like this. No, that's the only way you've been exposed to. Right? So people think the only way, why would I want to do a belt demonstration? That's not the real way. I need to win a competition before I get my belt. That's the only way to do it. Oh, that's because your instructor does it that way.
That's very fixed mindset.
Welcome to humanity.
I'm just saying that, like, if I think some of this was relaxed, but in a sense of open-minded, I shouldn't say relaxed, but a little bit more open-minded, perhaps this evolution would be shaping slightly differently, wouldn't it?
Well, we're in the middle of it, and the thing that makes people want to evolve faster and try different things is competition.
Yeah,
because you want an edge, and one edge that you can get is technical novelty. You lose by what the other guy knows and you don't.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. So if you have technical novelty, but technical novelty only goes so far.
Oh, it's actually a very, very short sprint if you really think about it. It doesn't take a genius with today's technology to notice what other people do and copy off of them.
Right. Or to do a heel hook in an era where people aren't doing heel hooks. Mm-hmm. It's fine. Like Pat Smith had no idea what Ken Shamrock was doing to his leg.
Mm-hmm.
Zero. And he waited too long to tap.
Too long. Yep.
Right. So when it comes to that technical novelty, you can have that edge for a while. And then a lot of people, that's why a lot of people didn't like leg locks in the early days, because it doesn't demonstrate any mastery of guard passing and positional dominance. You get to skip all that, and you can end up with a submission. It's like power with no control. You can do that for a while, but then eventually people get hip to it. They learn the defenses. Mm-hmm. Their awareness, their situational awareness increases, and then boom,
Well, that's
You
what
know,
we're seeing right now, right? This
oh yeah,
leg like boom is, I wouldn't say disappearing, it's not, but
it's
there's
fading.
definitely fading away. People are getting smarter about it, and it's just not as dominant as it used to be, right?
Exactly, exactly. So now, it's really about being the most well-rounded. You,
Hmm.
you still have to strengthen your strength, in the words of my teacher, Mr. Harris. You have to, because that's your edge, and it's often dictated by your personality and your body type. And I can never get away from the fact that triangle is like one of my best submissions because I have long legs. You know, but so you always have to strengthen your strength, but you need to be well-rounded if you go, and that's particularly important in MMA, where you see guys that are extremely, look like Demian Maia versus Anderson Silva.
Hmm. Oh yeah,
Terrible,
I remember
terrible,
that.
terrible fight from a fan's perspective, but from a strategic perspective is brilliant. Anderson Silva did exactly what he needed to do to win. He knew if it went to the ground, he'd be in trouble. Not that he's not a highly, highly skilled black belt himself, but Damian Maia is a magician.
Mhm.
So you can rise to the pretty close to the very top, being highly specialized and a little bit lopsided in your skill set. But at the very top, you will meet those people that can negate your specialty and outwork you in an area where you're deficient. And you can look at Ronda Rousey, you can look at Damian
Mhm.
Maia, there's so many different examples
Well,
of
that's what it
that.
takes to play the game, right? Because ultimately, this is a game from a sport perspective, right? There are rules, and the person who can manipulate this the best, the person wins, right?
Well, you can manipulate there's, I don't know if it's really manipulating the rules. I think manipulating the rules is like,
Well, playing within the rules, maybe.
playing within the rules.
Hmm.
But there's a martial truth that emerges within the rule set that's
Yeah,
given.
yeah. Let's pivot this a little bit. Over the years, as I've been watching you, you've been involved in a number of different projects, from video to assisting students with curriculums and guiding them to the association that you have built under your name and all of this. And today you're digging into history. The most
Mhm.
recent project is especially fascinating to me, and I was telling you this before we got on the air. You sat down, or you are sitting down with a number of pioneers, what we would consider pioneers, the guys who are still around, but they definitely paved the path for all of us, including you.
Yeah.
And you documenting the story.
Mm.
Why
Mhm.
document the story?
Great question. I think it's because the past is being lost, and it's being
Why do
lost rapidly.
why do you think it's being lost?
There's a generation of practitioners that don't know who Hoyler Gracie is.
Agreed.
There's a generation, they don't know who Marcelo Garcia is. Only because of his recent matches in one championship do
Hmm.
they know who he is. But he's one of the greatest grapplers of, our time, if not all time. And people have no idea who that guy is. And I mean, that they forget him, and we are interviewing his teachers.
Yep,
You
the
know,
generation prior to that.
the generation prior to that. What I'm doing in this latest project, Groundswell, the rise of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in America. We are interviewing first generation pioneers of the art in the USA, and we are capturing their stories so that other people, before the era of $1 million tournaments, they were doing it for blood, for honor, for the glory of jiu-jitsu. They were doing it with, there was upside, but it's not the kind of upside that people are into these days, a medal and money and social media cred. They were doing they had a much more pure motivation for spreading the art. And it was tough. It was tough in those days. I mean,
Why do you think these guys did it for that? Why the word, the almost the title of defending the honor was so important than anything else? I mean, they know more than anybody else, but I'm pretty sure they could use compensation, monetary compensation for what they've gone through. Like migrating, especially some of them born in the U.S. They came to born in Brazil, came to U.S. It's life is not unicorn and rainbows, and yet they have this desire to show everybody what they know, what they do is important.
I think a lot of it was obligation to their teacher. You know, we interview many. We have 9 different masters that we're interviewing, and I'll just go through them quickly. The great
Mhm.
Jean-Jacques Machado,
Mhm.
Joe Moreira,
Mhm.
Pedro Valente, Fabio Santos, Claudio França, Pedro Sauer, Steve Maxwell, Ricardo Frangia Miller, and Homero Jacare Cavalcanti. These guys, we have individual reasons for including them, and I can get into each one. But for example, Steve Maxwell talks about the last challenge match he did. He was 45 years old, and he only weighed like 145, maybe 155 pounds. And he fought some huge wrestler, no gi. And the only reason he did it was Hoist was there that day.
You know what's fascinating about this? The 90% people who listen to this conversation probably don't even know what challenge matches are.
Yeah, and it was such a huge part of it. Yeah, those don't happen now. Those
No.
don't happen. If anything, there'd be if anything, they're manufactured via social media so you
Yep.
can get a better payday. But there was, believe me, no payday. There was no payday back then. And almost all of these guys, some did a lot more than others, but Joe Moreira engaged in challenge matches, both in Brazil and in the US. He had to do a challenge match to get in the UFC. They brought two guys for him to fight. A really huge boxer named Zane Frazier, and then they brought another guy who was kind of a wrestler type. And you can see it on YouTube, and they had like the UFC rep there, and they, he totally dominated. He was like, well, let me take the big guy first. He dominated the big guy and tapped him with an Americana. He dominated him so well, they're like, you don't have to do the second match. That's totally fine, you know. And Pedro Sauer, oh my God, he has such incredible stories in this book.
What a rich story, yeah.
Oh, he's such a great storyteller. His English is impeccable. I mean, he's had such an incredible life. He was a stockbroker. He was doing very, very well in Brazil. He didn't have to come to the U.S., but he felt a calling. Well, he tells a story about how he got kidnapped in Brazil and barely made it out of that kidnapping. He got picked up by the police in an area where they only pick up dead bodies. The police go there like once or twice a day to pick up dead bodies. And they said that he and this girl that he was with, they were the only people they'd ever seen alive there. That's just one of the stories he tells in this book. But he said that when he came over to the U.S., they were in, I think it was Horian's garage. And the Machados came over. He talks about Higa Machado and Hickson were sparring pretty rough, and Pedro and Elio Gracie told him, now, Pedrino, don't disappoint me. And Pedro Sauer heard people talking outside the garage as they were walking up. They're like, oh yeah, I hear Pedro Sauer. He's supposed to be Elio's golden boy. Yeah, he's supposed to be here today. And it was like, he had to go through some really rough, proving grounds, not only sparring in the garage that day. And he was, I forget the injuries he sustained sparring in the garage that day, but he was in Abu Dhabi, during 9/11, and his flight was delayed. He was coming back from teaching Sheikh Tanun, and he had to stay there for like a couple of extra weeks. And he fought all the guys, like the Sambo champions, the wrestling champions that were also at the ADCC Combat Club, or the combat club that Sheikh Tanun created. And he said they never tapped me. He tapped all of them. Or his fight against Mr. Utah, Lance Batchelor. He goes into great depth about that story, and the rules that were devised. He couldn't break the guy's arm because he thought he could be held liable, and Horian told him, like, do not break his arm. He arm locked him, and he popped it, and the guy tapped, but he did not, and screamed, but he didn't break it, although he could have. And these are the behind the scenes stories of what brought Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to popularity. There's so many. Fabio Santos, I mean, you can see him on the Gracie
What a
Action
phenomenal
tapes.
storyteller. Yeah, I had him on the show. What a great conversation.
Oh my God.
So look, I see many reasons why they want to tell a story, but why do you want to tell those stories?
Well, there's a set of books that were highly influential on my journey, and they're called Aikido Masters Pre-War and Post-War Era. Okay, so these were, Aikido is a form of Jiu-Jitsu, and it was dominated by one organization called the Aikikai. That's kind of the mainline Aikido organization. And they had their own narrative, shall we say, on the art and how it was, and the development of it. Well, there was a man named Stanley Pranin who founded Aikido Journal, really an incredible historic martial arts publication. And he was a brilliant man. He spoke 9 languages, and he actually went to Japan, and, he was under a different teacher, the kind of Iwama style, different than the Aikikai. He was Iwama style under Saito Sensei. And he interviewed all these direct students of Morihei Ueshiba, the founder of Aikido. And he didn't try to paint a narrative of anything. He just interviewed them and got their truth, their unfiltered narrative. He interviewed them in Japanese, by the way. Mm-hmm. They responded in Japanese, and he translated for American audiences. And he put down their interviews into 2 books, Pre-War and Post-War Aikido Masters. And I read these books when I was 19 years old. And there were some incredibly influential martial artists. The audience for this podcast may not know the name Gozo Shioda or Minoru Mochizuki. Mochizuki was such a badass. Let me just talk about him. Gozo Shioda, he put down one of JFK's bodyguards. They grabbed him, and he put him down with a wrist lock down on the ground within seconds. They were totally unaware of these techniques. Mochizuki was the first martial artist to receive a black belt from all 3 modern Budo masters. A black belt in Judo from Jigoro Kano. A black belt in Aikido from Morihei Ueshiba. And a black belt in Karate from Gichin Funakoshi. Total badass.
Very impressive.
And these are like founding fathers of Budo. And interviewing them was so influential. I remember they asked him, Mochizuki particularly, because he had been in the war. They asked him, does Aikido apply off the mat? He said, Aikido is everywhere. Aikido is in everything. It's with a bayonet. It's with a missile. It's with a bullet. And it was just so mind expanding. And I felt like these people are being forgotten. Mm-hmm. And I'm not trying to establish a narrative. I'm trying to preserve their truth. So my business partner, Josh Gold, he had republished those very, very influential books, Aikido pre-war and post-war masters as beautiful coffee table editions. They went back, they got a professional copy editor, they got all the historic photographs, they relayed them out. They are some of the most beautiful martial arts books that I've ever seen. And we decided to do the same thing for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Let's interview these Budo masters now and put it in a similar, like, epic coffee table style book with not historic photographs, but gallery grade photography in black and white. So we have, it is going to be the most beautiful book ever produced on the art of Jiu-Jitsu. I can say that without reservation. Our photographer, Gary Payne, crushed it. And we have the same photographer for every interview. We flew these people in for most of the time. We did travel once to see somebody, but mostly we flew them in so we could have a controlled environment. Mm-hmm. And being able to preserve their stories, I think it's very important. I mean, this is part of the historic record. I try to, in everything I do, I try to put the art of jiu-jitsu in the best light possible, whether I'm producing a video or producing videos about, a training environment like CVBJJ or, or doing an interview. I'm always trying to show that it's so much more than a sport. It's an art that is practiced as a sport. And the art has so many repercussions outside of the mat. And Jigoro Kano, he knew that. And I'm really trying to continue that legacy of Jiu-Jitsu as education, a means of moral and physical education. And this project is an extension of that, preserving the truth. So there's no monopolized narrative of how the art came to be in the U.S.
Do you feel a certain level of responsibility to deliver this, in a sense of telling the truth?
Yes.
Why?
Absolutely. Well, who else is going to do it? Robert Drysdale is doing it. Mm-hmm. But he's doing it in a different way, and he's done great work. He just sent me 3 of his books, like What is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Today? And some others I already had, Open and Close Guard. Mm-hmm. But it's a little different. And, his take is a little different. He's usually trying to kind of offer, I wouldn't say narrative, but kind of a hypothesis on, modern jiu-jitsu is the way it is today because of, the evolution of the rule set, or, he also interviewed all these, in Open and Close Guard, kind of the roots of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, yep, kind of non-Gracie lineages like Fada and all of that. But he went back to Brazil. We really narrowed it down to the thing that really affected me. It was close to me because these were the teachers that I had around me.
How did you select the 9? Because that's fascinating things. As I was learning about it and reading what's available right now and looking at your project, that's 9. I can hands down pick 30 that would fit into the bubble of what you're describing.
Well, I mean, yes and no. We don't really want anyone after 2000. Okay. You have to come before 1999. And
that's
for example,
still a large group. I mean, large in a sense more than 9.
Yes. For example, Ricardo Laborio, legend.
Yes, that's one of the ones that came to my mind. Yeah.
Absolutely, right? But he didn't really come to the U.S. until 2002. And he didn't actually found like American Top Team until 2002.
Yeah, okay.
So it's a little bit, he's kind of an edge case there. And even though they consider him some in the De La Riva lineage and Carlson Gracie side, they consider him to be kind of the bridge between the old school jiu-jitsu and the modern jiu-jitsu. But I feel like he came over a little bit late. Okay. And it had already been established. MMA was already big. He wasn't doing the challenge matches.
So what were your criteria to narrow out the 9? Or perhaps it wasn't 9, just so it happened to be 9.
Yeah,
But-
9 fits the length of the book. We have a decent selection, and there's, you should be here when it was really emerging, when it was rough, when hardly anyone knew about it. And there are other people that, first when we originally developed the list, I mean, we have of course, Hickson Gracie, Ricardo Laborio, Hobson Mora, Craig Kukuk,
Mhm.
Marcio Feitosa, Marcelo Alonso, Carly Gracie, Horian Gracie, blah, 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 Francisco Mansour. Yeah, but a lot of these people actually, well, one, we don't want it to be all Gracie. We know what that narrative is, for the most part. We know. And there were some Gracies that we contacted and they agreed to do it, but scheduling was difficult.
You actually don't have any Gracies on that list.
No, we were considering doing one Gracie. We have 8 of the 9 completed, and we considered doing one Gracie to include them. And the top of the list, of course, was of course Horian. Without Horian, like, none of us would be doing what we're doing. Horian declined. Multiple times. He was approached by many people on our behalf and approached directly, and he does not want to be a part of this project.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. He said he's working on his own book.
Okay.
So we have that. And, we also have an old, through Aikido Journal, he did an interview with Stanley Pranin, actually, right after the UFC happened. And so and that was interesting. We've considered including that in the book as well. But I think we're edging on, no, we won't include it. Although he did do a very extensive interview with Stanley Pranin. And it is interesting to see that. I think we'll just refer to it and direct people to, because at that time he was more than happy to do it. And because Aikido had a much greater audience, much bigger audience than Gracie Jiu-Jitsu at that time. And it's also interesting, like, his narrative at that time, with Hoist having won the UFC one time, and we approached Hickson we have many close students of his that we approached him through, and he was like, he hemmed and hawed, and he was just, we would still love to include him. And if we do 10 instead, then that would be fine. But I think it's one of those things, and I've been invited to go and train with him personally, but I think he needs to meet me, and then he would be open to do it, But, and this is through several close black belts of his. There were some Gracies that we did not want to include. I will not mention their names, but there were some that I felt were not good representatives of the art.
Well,
Yes.
end of the day, this is your project, right? And I think it's important to always remember that, some will make the cut and some won't, and some stories will be told and others won't. And I think that's the beauty behind mediums like this, that we can be selective, and it's okay to be selective.
The choice is, selecting cuts for an album. You order them in a certain way. Some are great B-sides. Some were almost there, but not quite. They were half-baked and they're ready for the next album. There's a definite choice. One person that we really wanted to include was Craig Kukuk. For those unfamiliar, Craig Kukuk was the first American to earn his black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He did it down in Brazil under Hoyler. And Craig is a recluse. I talked to, one of his closest, a really great black belt named Jason Flynn. And Jason's a great guy, a superb practitioner. We just talked the other day on the gram, and Craig is a recluse. He's dealing with a lot of injuries. He's
Yeah.
not really involved anymore. And
Yeah.
it didn't matter if we were willing to fly him down and take care of him. He's not into it. He's not
I think
interested.
he's in a different chapter. I've heard that from other sources. So yeah.
Yeah, right. So
Is there one thing that is not making the book and you kind of disappointed in a sense? And I'm not talking about people, perhaps a story or a moment or element, something that just didn't make the cut and it was so short, so close. Something that is going to be in your mind that, well, maybe nobody would know if we were to mention it now.
if we don't mention it now, I don't think there's anything that is missing. I do feel like there could have been some strong contenders for a Gracie interview. And people might say, "Hey, won't you interview like Henner Gracie or Hiram Gracie?" Because they were kids, and they're second generation masters. Like my instructor, Roy Harris, he would not fit in this lineup. Chris Howder would not fit in this lineup. He would be in the second book, right? So we haven't mapped out. We have first generation pioneers, and then we have second generation masters.
So you're saying there's a second book coming up?
It is quite possible there's a second book coming up. It is quite possible. But it doesn't really make sense to include them because it's the historical lineage, right? I don't want to include someone who got their black belt under the Machados. We need to interview someone from the Machados. So we do Jean-Jacques Machado. We also don't want to interview Higan Machado because we already have one Machado.
Yeah.
So there's a selection process involved here where
I would imagine this wasn't as easy as it appears. I mean, it appears to be very cool project, like as I'm seeing as a third party from outside in. But I would imagine that selection, even not only who you select, but the stories that they have to share, is probably challenging, isn't it?
well, no one was willing to do this level of work. I would say it all the time. Like that's why no one else is doing this, because no one's willing to do the work the way Josh and I were. It took months sometimes to line up an interview. And there's all kinds of scheduling difficulties. Sometimes they would agree, and then there some are very capricious. Like they agree immediately. Okay, let's do it now. Oh, sorry, I'm not going to do it now. I can't do it. You just told me that was the day you were available. Oh, sorry, I'm not available. It's like you have no idea what we went through, and no one will ever understand. It's like the Metallica Black Album. The actual engineer who did that, he listens to it, and all he hears is the work. All he hears is the work. Other people hear, how good it sounds. He doesn't.
But it has to feel good when this comes out, and perhaps that the impact moment will come in a little bit later for you. But I would imagine once this is done and you see this in other people's hands and you see the little eye twinkle or a smile on somebody's face, and this moment or this history has been documented, this has to feel good for you.
Yeah, we're not there yet, but we will be very proud. I mean, there are times where we would be going over an interview and we're saying, oh, this is so good. Oh my God, can you believe this? Can you believe how good this is? This is incredible. This is a great interview. And that's not hype. That is just us. As I'm a big fan of Rick Rubin, the music producer, and he's like, great art has to be personal. So I am interested in all of these people. I personally, as a student of the art, am interested in these people. If other people aren't as interested, that's okay, but they will learn why I'm interested in each of these people. And let me go down the list. Each one has a like something special about them. Jean-Jacques Machado, obviously, like what a story. One hand, not totally, but everyone knows the story, and his run in ADCC was incredible. The premier submission grappler way ahead of his time. Joe Morera, my instructor's instructor. One thing I found out through this, I mean, he basically put on the first tournament here in the US, and he was putting on, there was only, you know, back in the day, there was only one tournament a year in Brazil for BJJ, but there were a ton for judo. He also studied under Isao Okano, the legendary judoka, an incredible master of the art who had a falling out with the Kodokan. I was training with Danaher, and he was telling stories about Isao Okano, a story about a world champion visiting his gym. And I realized, I knew Joe Morera had studied judo in Japan, but I didn't know he lived for a year training under Isao Okano. And for me to be part of that technical lineage was so cool. Pedro Valente, the favorite nephew of Elio Gracie. You cannot get closer to the Gracies, the Valente brothers, and he is a historian. He is the closest thing to a historian of that family, of his own family, and he has great knowledge. You know, side story, we're at the Gracie Lifestyle Summit put on by Hiron, and one of the guest instructors was Eric Paulson. And Eric talked about bringing a Shuto tape and giving it to Hickson, where he said, hey, check out what these guys do to the legs. And Hickson saw the knee bar for the first time. The next time in class, Hickson's hitting knee bars. Like boom, 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 hit like 5 knee bars in class. And then Pedro remembers when he flew to Brazil and introduced the knee bar down there. Pedro remembers the day after, and he just put it together. Oh, Eric Paulson introduced him to that knee bar, and then Hickson brought it down to expose him while he was still in Brazil. So I mean, the connections with these people, it's fascinating to see this. Fabio Santos, I mean, dude, the teacher of Dean Lister, the teacher of Jocko Willink, teacher, you know, he participated in many Gracie challenges.
That's a walking history right there.
Absolutely. And he didn't even get in. He wasn't under Elio. He was under Holes.
Yeah.
He was a surfing buddy of Holes before he ever got into jiu-jitsu. Claudio Franza. This one is personal. Claudio was my first instructor, and his U.S. Open, which celebrates its 30th anniversary this weekend, the U.S. Open of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was the prototype for the IBJJF. It was the only professionally run tournament in the U.S. Everything ran on time, and it was fair. And I'd been to many, many janky tournaments before then. You know, running hours behind schedule. You know, referees on, you know, eating pizza and siding with the Brazilians because they're speaking Portuguese. This was like, that was the prototype for the fair, the IBJJF has become today. Plus, I mean, Claudio, man, he was a Pan American champion. He was putting guys out in under 30 seconds and winning the gold medal. You know, and he did that multiple times. A real technician. Pedro Sauer. I mean, Elio's golden boy.
Yep.
Incredibly well spoken. You know, the match against Mr. Utah, the challenge match, was legendary. I mean, that is right up there with Nogueira versus Bob Sapp, in my opinion, for proving jiu-jitsu. Steve Maxwell, East Coast representing, right? He opened the first Gracie Jiu-Jitsu training center in the U.S. outside of Torrance as a purple belt. Everyone on the East Coast, with the exception of Renzo Gracie, is a derivative of that original Maxercise. The Migler-Reese brothers, you know, Jared Weiner, all those guys, they're all derivative of Steve Maxwell. Plus, you know, Steve was consistently voted one of the top 100, you know, personal trainers in the U.S. He's been on Rogan a bunch of times. He's a legend and open-minded. And the fact that he fell in love with jiu-jitsu, it's good to see it from a non-martial artist perspective. Yeah, he's a martial artist, but he's really a physical trainer and coming in with that mentality. So that was incredible. Ricardo Frangia Miller. You know, for those that are unfamiliar, he's the head of Paragon Jiu-Jitsu. He taught Jeff Glover. He taught Bill the Grill Cooper. He taught a guy named Tyrone Glover, who was his first black belt. I was there the night he awarded his first black belt to Tyrone at City Boxing in San Diego. They drove down. And at that time, Tyrone was in the Pride, like Prodigy program, like the Future Fighters of Pride fighting championship.
Mm-hmm.
He retired 6-0 as a MMA professional before he went to law school. Frangia, and for all of these interviews, we interview a top student that was very, very close to them during this time. So we do 2 interviews. We do a pre-interview with a top student so we can get the very best questions. And then we do the interview. And interviewing Jeff, excuse me, Jeff was like, he was the American Roy in an era where so many Brazilians were holding back techniques and they wanted to keep the Brazilians on top. He said, no way. I'm giving everything to these guys. And he was one of the first people to make his American competitors better than the Brazilians. And then Homero Jacare Cavalcanti. Now, this is someone that I find kind of necessary. This is interesting to me because he's the head of Alliance.
Yeah.
And he's a co-founder. He's the teacher of Fabio Gurgel. He's a Holes Gracie student. You know, there would be no Marcelo Garcia without Fabio Gurgel, without Jacare Cavalcanti. You know, so, and he came over early. He established in Atlanta very early on. And so, you know, just as a fan of the art, I don't have any personal connection to him. I've never met him before. He's in Brazil. When he comes back, he will be our 9th and final interview. He lives in Brazil, but he comes over once a year to visit his daughter around the holidays. So at that time, we'll fly him out to California and do an interview on him. And it's nice because I want a mix of the lineages too. You know, it's good to have the Gracie lineage. It's good to have the Holes Gracie representation. It's also good to get the kind of the Alliance representation as well. So I think it's a pretty well-rounded list. Yeah, so that's why we chose these 9 in particular.
Do you feel like you are a lucky cat? I mean, Roy, many people would, first of all, millions watch videos on all of these guys and they drool all over it. Second, some have an opportunity to meet them maybe in passing, maybe past or, you know, shake their hand, or maybe in a seminar, for those who do still do it. Some, handful, are able to perhaps study underneath them or have a little bit closer connection. But very few, if not you, might be the only one who is able to sit down with that personal connection, one-on-one, intimate, without any limits, essentially, and have a very deep conversation with them, and then documented all of it.
Oh, I live a charmed life.
I feel like you are a lucky cat right now.
Oh, I mean, come on. Yeah. I mean, I could not have scripted my life the way it is. The fact that I, you know, without the last name of a Gracie, I'm able to make a living teaching jiu-jitsu. The fact that I've been all over the world as an ambassador of the art. The fact that I get to interact with these legends and shine a light on them that they deserve. The fact that I can put them, when people see this book, they're going to trip.
Yeah.
People aren't going to believe that. People are going to want a copy, because this is going to get in every academy. They're going to be like, oh my God, it is art, you know? And so that's what I've done my entire career. I've been able to combine my love of video and music and motion and turn it into something that inspires people. And so this is just another extension of that. And the fact that I get to do this, I mean, I've had other people tell me that same thing, like, boy, do you realize how lucky you are being able to talk to these people? And it is not lost on me that I live a charmed life.
Well, good for you. Good for you. You know, when I was speaking with Robert Drysdale, when he was talking about his book, when he traveled to Brazil and interviewed everybody and all that, and it really hit me, the magnitude of what he was making. at that time when he said, between the time I talked to these guys and the time the book released, few of them already passed. And those stories would not be told if I didn't flew out there. And it really, really hit me.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And he has done a service to the historic record. Robert Drysdale is probably the leader in that sense. Yeah, beyond being a world champion, ADCC champ, and UFC vet, and all of that. He's got his kind of athletic credentials maxed out. But that's not really the legacy that he's going to leave. It's going to be more on the historic front. And whether I have a legacy or not, that doesn't matter. That comes later. The fact that my effort gets to be channeled into something like this, that gets to complement the work that Robert Drysdale has done. This is not a replacement of. This is a complement to what he's done.
Well, I think it's important to acknowledge that, look, I think you have built your legacy already and you continue building it. And I know you're a very humble person. I get that. But I think you're making a huge dent on what people need from that perspective. You are documenting this in such a beautiful form. And I can't wait when this comes out. I'm definitely getting my hands on this. So I'm a total nerd on stuff like this. So
you're gonna, I mean, I was telling last time I was at Grapplers Retreat, I said, this time next year, you're going to have a copy of this book here. I showed them some previews and they were like, whoa. Because a lot of the old school guys, this is the juice that they want. They want some of these old,
This is what we grew up on. This is me being a white belt and Googling these guys. This is me like looking these guys up. Like this is it. We need that. And the newer generation, this is their moment to anchor their thoughts of where all of this came from. Yes. Roy, when is this coming out? When is the book going to be available?
We are going to wrap up very early in January with final edits. And then we will send it to the printer. And the printing doesn't take very long. It only takes a few weeks, but the shipping takes a long time. So we're expecting it at the end of March 2026 to, mid-April 2026. That is our projected timeline to receive the books and have it distributed.
Sweet. And I know you have a Kickstarter going on this to help with some of the funding, right? So we will share the links to all of this. But is there one place where everybody can find more information on this project or, perhaps even purchase the book when it's available?
Yes, definitely go to Kickstarter. Go to Kickstarter. And if it sounds interesting, support the project now. It helps us inform how many we're going to do. What the total run is going to be. When people see it and we have a limited run, it's going to be scarce for this one. Now, I expect if we do a second book with the students of these people, for example, that would be the book where we have Chris Howder, where we have Roy Harris, John Danaher, Rafael Lovato Jr., those people. That will probably be another beautiful addition that might even be more popular. But if you want that book to happen, you should support this one because this is the foundation of their game, of their education. And go to Kickstarter, look up BJJ Pioneers or Groundswell, the rise of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in America. And you can get a really nice overview. We include some photos, we include some story excerpts, and I'm really, I'm proud of this project. Josh and I have put in a tremendous amount of work. We're still working on it, and it will be a great service to the art. I can't wait to have this at Gracie University. I can't wait to send it out so that at Kingsway it can be there and people can say, whoa, these are the pioneers that allowed this incredible dojo that we happen to be training in. None of this would be possible without the people in this book.
Amazing. Roy, thank you for being here. As always, I will include all the links, including the Kickstarter in the show notes of this episode, so you guys can go contribute and, be on the same page and make sure that you guys are supporting projects like this, because this is part of history, the beautiful art that we all love. Roy, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing not only your philosophy at the beginning of this conversation, but also this amazing project. I can't wait when this comes out in about 6 months or so. And I'm definitely getting my hands on this because, like I said, I'm a nerd and this is definitely up my alley.
Oh, Thomas, I appreciate the opportunity to share. Thanks for having me on your platform and spreading the good word about this art that we love.
Absolutely. Let's wrap it up for today.
Thank you for listening to RŌL Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.